team. And he said, I got a job, pay you $30,000 in 6 months. I said, great. When did we get started? He said, as soon as you leave where you are and start your own business. Took a big swallow, and I looked at him and I said, huh? Really? What? He says, yeah, I think it's time. It's time for you to do it. You just don't know it. And Hammond needs you to do it. And like any good attorney, he sold it well. I went and talked to my wife, Denise, and said, we don't have anything to lose because we don't have anything to lose. Simple as that.
Title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm here today with my producer, Mr. Daniel Sagona with Propel Productions. And our guest today is Mr. Michael Holley, founding principal of Holley & Smith Architects. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here.
So you're celebrating your 40th anniversary of your architectural design firm.
That's correct.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what is your most distinct thought or feeling or emotion as you look back over the body of work that you've created over the last 4 decades?
When we first started, it was trying to get a body of work, trying to build something and build an image and a brand and something you could be proud of. And I look back at it now, it's pretty awesome to think about everything that we've been involved with, that we've done, and that we're currently doing. And so, people ask me, what's your most favorite project? And it's kind of like, well, it's the one I'm working on right now.
Yeah. Just looking at your website and looking at your portfolio of work, it is truly breathtaking in what your firm has put out there. And I was just curious if you can take yourself back 40 years ago. You're in Hammond, Louisiana. Could you ever have imagined that you could have produced so much?
No, not in the least bit. Never thought we would be where we are today. But 40 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And as you progress, so do you. I mean, the horizon's there. You start to see it and understand it. And but back then, no clue.
Yeah, but as I was thinking of that question, I'm looking at your website. I'm looking at all of the images of all of your projects. And if you think about 40 years ago, there was no internet, right? So not only could you...
There wasn't any computers.
That's right. So not only could you not have imagined that body of work, but you certainly could have imagined being able to present it in the way that you can today, which is just very striking. So
Right. I remember when we had to present that information in some manner, bound or whatever, for somebody to see. I remember once upon a time, I guess 35 years ago, I was invited by a professional group out of New York to submit my housing design work. And I asked them why. And they said, well, there's a major multinational corporation interested in your work from the Midwest. And I went, wow, okay. So we submitted it, and we get we get a letter back from them some 6 weeks later that congratulations, you're part of the Domino's 30. And we became one of 30 architectural firms nationally recognized by Domino's Pizza, Tom Moynihan, who was building a development in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And he said, only these 30 architects can be involved in this development. You have to pick from one of them.
Wow. Did much come of that?
Absolutely nothing. Let me tell you what happened. Later on, my contact there, I hadn't heard from him, so I had to submit this whole portfolio, and we actually called to find out what was going on because we hadn't heard anything. And he said, Tom has mothballed the whole project, including his own house, which was 29,000 square feet.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was being designed by Fay Jones. And he redirected all the money to missions in South America.
Yep. There was a transition there in his life when he was buying baseball teams and everything, and he just flipped a switch.
That's right.
Wow. So, Mike, I wanted to ask you, why is good design important, and how does it impact us?
Oh, it's all about quality of life. You know what Winston Churchill said? He said, we shape buildings and then buildings shape us. It's a pretty profound statement, and it's what it's all about. We create environments. It's about quality of life. We deal with increasing and enhancing the quality of life in our design work. And so it's not just about providing a service to get something built. It's about thinking about the foundations by which all of this comes from and enhancing quality of life as a result of the work that you do.
Yeah. So I had a project that kind of speaks to that question. And it involved your firm, a project that I was working with your partner, Jeffrey Smith. He had a client, had owned a strip shopping center, and he had a pharmacy in that strip shopping center, but he needed drive-through service, right? So he needed a pickup window. So he determined that he could build a building in the little out parcel of his own shopping center. And but he wanted the cheapest building that he could get, and he in fact asked for a pre-engineered metal building.
Correct.
Right? And of course, being the architect that Jeff is, he wanted to do something a little more aesthetically pleasing than that. So he said, look, to his client, he said, I understand your budget, but why don't you let us work on it? He and I went to meet with him together, and let us, Jeffrey, come up with the design, and then we'll work on a budget from the construction perspective, and let's see if we can get you something in your budget. And so Jeffrey did a great job and created a very simple but elegant and beautiful design that did everything that his client wanted in his budget. And it was transformational to his business. And what struck me about that is I can remember him being so excited about the response that he was getting from his customers.
Correct.
That were coming into the store, and they were elated that this was their pharmacy. This was, their building. And they were proud of it, and business boomed. And he ended up a fan of good design at that point, and then several other projects followed. So it was really interesting to see that from my perspective, because good design was not part of the original conversation at all.
Well, the backstory to that is that not only did he want a metal building to do this in, he wanted to put it in front of his shopping center at the front door entrance of the complex. Mm-hmm. It was an older shopping center in a very busy street, intersection actually, and it was viable as a little shopping center. But to put it basically front and center, and we felt the responsibility to make sure that he wasn't sorry he put it there. Yeah. And I mean, there was no way we were going to let him put a pre-engineered metal building, as we all know them, there. Now, could we use those components? Yeah. But when you get out of the norm, you know what happens as a contractor. You know that it gets more expensive. So we took it a different route and turned it into something that is not only pleasing, exciting, but it really turned this guy around.
Yeah,
he became a personal friend of Jeffrey's.
Yeah,
and we did 2 more developments for him.
That's right.
And now we're doing a 4th one for another pharmacist in Franklinton. So a very similar situation.
Yeah, very cool. So, Mike, design is a process, right? So I wanted to see if you could shed some light on that process and then tell us if there's a certain part of that process that resonates with you more than the other, that you enjoy more.
Well, there's many steps to this process.
Right.
I mean, the way we do it inside of our organization is one thing that we can talk about in just a second. But what's most important to me is just the concept of idea making. When I was in college, I got very frustrated with this idea that you can be creative, and I went into the library to find out. I went into a library, by the way, something many people don't know about today, but and I found a lot of information on this process called the creative process, and it's a very, very much a real process that we all go through. We don't know it, but it was very nice for me to understand it and to go through that process.
Well, you've written about the importance of understanding frustration as a part of that process.
Yeah. It's input. You put in everything that you can think of that has to do with the problem or the challenge. And then what happens is you get frustrated because you can't come up with an idea. But you got to understand that's part of the process. And, we don't use 90% of our brain. It's all subconscious. And that's where ideas come from. I get ideas when I'm just waking up in the morning, or when I'm just going to sleep, or when my brain is in neutral, because that's when the subconscious pops them in there. But you've got to be able to prepare yourself with the proper input. And you got to understand the frustration is part of the process. And when that idea pops, boom, it hits you square in the eyes. It happens to everybody. You just have to know how to manage it. And so when you get real frustrated, walk away, go get a cup of coffee, go talk to somebody about something else. It'll come to you. You have to let it happen.
You're passing 40 years in business, and then you're doing a transition in your leadership, and we'll talk about that. But as you get further away from running the company day to day, and that design aspect in your mind, that's not ever going to turn off.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And matter of fact, Jeffrey and I had that discussion just yesterday.
Really?
Talking about how it's hard. It's hard to step back and not continue down the process you've been doing for 40 years.
Yeah.
So I doubt it'll ever stop. Yeah. I can't imagine not waking up and going somewhere every morning. It's important.
So that, the other part of the process is, like the actual planning and, creating and sketching and elevations and renderings and contract documents and administration. And, when you look at that part of the design build process, is there a part of that you just gravitate to, that you just enjoy more than
it's the part we all enjoy and all want to do, and that's the idea making piece of it all. And it doesn't stop there, because it goes all the way through to the time you turn the keys over. But the whole idea making piece is on the front end is something everybody wants to be part of. And we have a process we've developed in our office. And I have to say that we have some incredibly talented people who work for us. And if you don't have incredibly talented people, you will not be successful. You can't do it alone. And if you do, then you're a superhuman. But the people that work with us are just as valuable as anybody else, and they all have different values and talents. And so you have to put that team together. So when we design something, we do it as a team. But procedurally, we come up with these big ideas, and we come up with ways to solve different challenges in different ways. We believe that we developed this concept, our thought through the years, but we believe that there are always more than one solution. There's always more than one. So where's the best one? The best one comes from a collaborative effort with the people who we call the experts or stakeholders in whatever we're doing work for. They know their process more than we do.
Right.
So we become facilitators, and we're highly skilled facilitators, but because we understand how things go together. But it's about solving those problems, and we do them in a collaborative way.
So did you grow up in a home with good design?
No. I didn't know what good design was until I got into college.
So how did you get interested in
architecture? I had a very, very special lady who actually was teaching me English when I was in high school. And I didn't know at the time, but she was a graduate interior designer married to an architect.
Oh, my goodness.
And she could not find a job. So she started teaching English. She had a minor in English. And so didn't know it at the time, but it was a remedial English class that I was in. But I'm way beyond that these days. But she saw it in me and said, you need to think about going to architecture school. And I looked at her like, what? Huh?
But she saw it firsthand through her husband of what skills, and then she saw that in you apparently. And
so she started me down that road after my first year in college.
What a gift!
Yeah,
I mean, honestly,
yeah,
she nailed it, right?
She did. She became a lifelong friend. She passed away not too long ago, and I celebrated her life with her children.
Wow. That's great. So mentors are a big part of an entrepreneur's journey, and you've written about a college professor.
Yes.
And there was something special there.
Yeah, his name was Jim Furman. He's an architect who's practicing in Morgan City, Louisiana, as a matter of fact. He was teaching at the time when I was a young baby rabbit student, and there was something special about him. He was very engaging, very challenging in his own way that he challenged people to do things. He had a very deep spirit. When I say that, he was an incredibly deep thinker and able to transmit information to those who don't realize they need it in a very special way. And he inspired me, and he challenged me. And only had him for 1 year, but I still know him today, and we still converse and back and forth. It's not a lot, but it's enough to matter, and I tell him that all the time.
That's cool. So what is the process of becoming an architect? I mean, I understand there's you've got like a 5-year college program.
Well, it's 6 these days, sometimes 6.5. It's a master's degree program. It wasn't when I was in school. It was 5 years for me. I got a professional degree from University of Louisiana in Lafayette.
But then you have to actually practice. Tell me that process, how you get a license.
When I first got out, it was like you had to but work under a practicing architect for 3 years before you could even qualify to take your professional exams. I did it the old way. Went into LSU and spent 2 days taking tests and walked away and passed it. Today, it's all done digitally, and it's in, I think, 7 sections. So you take it along the way, but you have 5 years to from the day you start to the day you finish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you still have the 3 years of?
No.
Okay,
no,
so
you can start anytime you want.
Okay.
But those who are smart enough realize they need a little water under their bridge before they go there.
So tell us how you started your business in Hammond, but you'd gone to school in Lafayette, right?
That's right. Right.
So how did you get to Hammond?
Well, I was offered a job, and it was an April morning when all the azaleas were blooming, just about like right now. And I drove into Hammond, and my wife and I, Denise and I, looked around and said, "Yeah, we can hang out here for a year. Let's do it." And so we did it, and we did it because we realized, or I realized, that Lafayette had just too many architects. It was a booming city, but at the same time, it was just hard to navigate through all that at the time in my brain. And I went to a smaller town and became a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And just started practicing.
But, I mean, you started working for a firm there.
Yes. And I want to say 2.5 years, maybe 3 years later, I get a call from my good friend Jay Seal, who says, "Come on over here. I have a job for you." He's an attorney. And I said,
"Great guy."
Went over to meet him, and he said, "I got a job, pay you $30,000 in 6 months." I said, "Great. When did we get started?" He said, "As soon as you leave where you are and start your own business." Took a big swallow, and I looked at him and I said, "Huh? Really? What?" He says, "Yeah, I think it's time. It's time for you to do it. You just don't know it. And Hammond needs you to do it." And like any good attorney, he sold it well. I went and talked to my wife, Denise, and said, "We don't have anything to lose because we don't have anything to lose." Simple as that. I had a 6-month-old kid, though. And so we got on that journey. And like any good attorney, he sold it well. And I got the money, but it was 18 months later. It wasn't 6. But after that, it was just all, things started flowing in. You do what you do, and you get it done, and you move on to the next project. And
what did that trajectory look like starting out? Some people, are an overnight 40-year success, and some people it starts pretty quickly. But what did that trajectory for your firm look like at that point?
It was scary.
Slow,
very slow. When you're starting out in a business, there's one thing that keeps you moving. It's one word. It's called survival. Yeah. When survival is out there and you and your family are at stake, you're going to get it done. You're going to figure it out. Right. And I did, and there were ups and downs. There were good times and there were not so good times. And I remember 1989, it was an awful time. We were down, Jeffrey was on board at that point, and we were partners, but we were down to 5 people. That included the receptionist. Mm. So it was pretty scary. Yeah. But beyond that, in 1991 or so, we made the commitment to grow. And we were going to do it by amassing the right talent, getting the people on board that we needed to get the work done and get it done well. And we went out and aggressively recruited people. We didn't wait for them to come in the door. And I went to the universities, went looking around for the right people to join our team. And some of those people are still with us today.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you if there were any particular accelerants in the growth of your business, whether it's personnel or, the economy or.
Well, when we spent 10 years kind of in the doldrums, so to speak, trying to grow and get work, and we did fairly well.
Wouldn't you say that's fairly common?
Yeah, in our business, I think from ground up, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you have to build a body of work to then go out and sell to get other work.
And you have to be a bit aggressive, in your approach to things. I remember our first, a second state of Louisiana project that we did for the state. And it was in a joint venture with another firm here in Baton Rouge. And I precipitated it. I pushed it to make it happen.
Yeah.
And so we got that job, and the next thing I know, we're with this group and another group, and we're chasing the federal courthouse in Baton Rouge, and we got it. Yeah. And that was a big stepping stone.
Well, let's come back from a break and talk about that, and we will be right back. One of our sponsors, MBD Maintenance, is excited to announce that after 25 years, they're rebranding their company name to Pivotal. It's the same ownership, same staff, same location. Just a new name that better represents the services that they provide their clients across the Southeast United States. Pivotal does commercial building construction and renovation. They do tenant improvement work in retail and office facilities. They do installation of dock doors in distribution centers, storm and fire damage repair, and catastrophe recovery for national disasters. The team at Pivotal is simply the best. They're experienced, they crush schedules, and they have an impeccable safety record. If Pivotal can help you with your next project, you can find them online at pivotalperforms.com. And we are back with Mike Holly, chairman of the board of Holly & Smith Architects. So, Mike, Katrina was a devastating event for the Gulf Coast, New Orleans, Louisiana in particular, and all the surrounding areas. Your business was definitely impacted by that. Give us a little insight on what that looked like initially, and then what it looked like in the months and years that followed.
Initially, we were just without power and without connection, no communications. We were in Hammond, so it wasn't like being in New Orleans.
Right.
But Hammond was pretty devastated with wind. We actually fumbled around for a few days trying to figure out our next move and what we were going to do.
Right.
Fortunately, Entergy had put in a new power line that fed our building, that fed a bunch of other very important facilities, and we got power back at our office within 5 days. And then we started helping other architects out. We had people in our office from other places that didn't have any place to be.
There was a period though, Mike, like, immediately after the storm, in the first couple of days, where it was completely uncertain when you would ever get power back.
That's a fact. It was kind of like, okay, what do we do now?
Yeah, I can remember talking to you, and it was disturbing time for all, and certainly for you at that time as well. But fortunately, like you said, you were able to get power back. So then, and your employees were able to get back to work fair.
Well, the good thing about getting power back at the office is that nobody had power at their house. So they came back to work. Just was a fact of life, and it just happened that everybody wanted to be in some air conditioning somewhere, and it certainly wasn't at their house, and there was a lot of things that had to be dealt with. And of course, we were pretty lenient with people and time and what they had to do to kind of put it back together. But we were able to get up and moving fairly quickly, and we helped others when they were in need. So it was a scary time. Even afterwards, we always thought, okay, what does this mean to us? What is it going to mean next week, next month, next year? And there was a lot of speculation about what had to be done and how we might fit into that game. But it turned out we had a lot to do.
Well, the rebuilding process started fairly quickly.
Yeah, we were at the time working at UNO at Kiefer Lakefront Arena. And I got a call from the state. We were replacing seats. We were replacing all the seats.
Right.
Okay. Well, that was the contract.
Right.
I got a call from the state saying, meet us at the education building at UNO. It was about maybe 3 weeks after the storm, and we want to talk about Kiefer. And it turns out that half the roof was gone. So they didn't need seats. They needed a roof. And so they amended our contract to replace the roof and told us, we need the plans and specs and quotes in our hands in 5 days. And, you just raise your eyebrows and say, okay, we'll figure this out, and it was sort of the primer for all the other work we did, knowing that it was an emergency and it was a pressing thing and we had to get it done. And interestingly enough, at the end of the day, we ended up with another contract with UNO. We touched close to 28 buildings on that campus.
Oh, my goodness.
And we're doing our last project as we speak.
You're kidding.
We're tearing down a 8-story building, but that's the last
16 years
under that
later.
same contract. And 16, yeah,
Unbelievable.
amazing. But there were delays as it related to who was going to pay and that kind of thing.
So at some point, you expand. So your business is is growing, a lot of work coming from the rebuilding process, along with everything else that you would have had going. But at some point, you decide to expand into New Orleans. Tell us how you did that, and the different thoughts that you considered in doing that.
I have to back up a bit. In, I guess, the late 90s, we did our first strategic plan as a company. And in that first plan, the idea was to expand into another office somewhere. Well, that laid dormant all the way through Katrina. And we had an update before Katrina happened. And it was still there. But we were trying to figure out how to do it and where to do it. And we talked about a lot of opportunities. But bottom line is we didn't move on it. And then Katrina happened, and we were so busy, we hired a young firm out of New Orleans, a guy by the name of Kevin Morris. Camo Studio was the name of the company, and we hired him to help us do a $52 million senior housing redevelopment in New Orleans East. And he helped us with that, and we got to know him, got to know him well, and we realized, Jeffrey and I both realized, that this guy has the same DNA as we do.
Oh, wow.
And so why don't we make a run at him, see if he's interested in joining our team and being part of our company. It took us 2 years to convince him, but we got there. And right after that, we got into some pretty large work, not necessarily Katrina related, but following the Katrina event.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when you look at a merger or an acquisition in any industry, one of the biggest challenges is culture.
Yeah.
Right. And the economics of the deal may look good. There may be a lot of strategic reasons why, you should do that deal, but it can all go south if your culture doesn't work. But with that experience, I was going to say, having worked with him and finding out that you did share that DNA, it seemed like that had checked that box on.
Yeah, but it was deeper than that. What I failed to tell you was that we don't do strategic plans on our own. We bring in people to help us do that. And in this particular case, we had a strategic planner from Seattle who was in the architectural industry, who helped us put together a lot of things, including this idea of this merger. And one thing he advised us to do was make sure that if this merger happens, that you have someone from your headquarters there. You can't do it in space, and you can't do it from afar. And so Jeffrey volunteered, and he was there at least 3 days a week for probably a year and a half before we got to a point where everybody was really comfortable with where we were. And then after that, we kind of backed off a little bit in terms of his travels to the city. And I was there a lot as well. It's an hour and 16 minutes to our office there. Yeah. So, and we started in one place, but moved to a location on Magazine Street, and been there ever since.
So when you look at the revenue that comes out of that office, that's been a very meaningful uptick for your firm?
Oh, yes. And exposure was important as well. And it's hard to measure what comes out of what office, because what we do is we shift resources as we need to.
I see.
And if we're light in Hammond and heavy in New Orleans, well, because of how we do our work today, it's not a hard thing to do. You just, everything is Revit on a model, and it's in the cloud, so everybody can get to it. So it's very easy to move resources around.
You had mentioned a federal courthouse in Baton Rouge earlier.
Yeah.
And I was curious and we're going, back across the timeline here, but what were your transformational type projects? When you look back over the body of work, what are the projects, big or small, that you define as being transformational for your business?
Very first one was probably a high school we did for Diocese of Baton Rouge, St. Thomas Aquinas. It was the first time Jeffrey and I worked together on a significant project. Thereafter, our second state job, was some work at DOT here in Baton Rouge with a joint venture, develop relationships with other firms, and they saw our worth and vice versa. And then the federal courthouse happened.
Which you were a part of a joint venture.
Part of a pretty unwieldy joint venture of 4 firms. But it was and what was most important to us with that project was that it be incredibly successful, and it didn't matter. Anything else didn't matter. It was important that we have that on our book of work, our resume.
I remember walking through that building while it was under construction, and I remember you telling me that, in a building like that, a federal courthouse, you're supposed to feel the weight of the government.
The instructions to us were that whoever stands in that building, especially those who are defendants, they need to feel the full brunt and force of the United States government. Yeah, they needed to feel very small.
Yeah, I was intrigued by that. That's
yeah.
And you know what? It's so true, right? I mean, I was thinking about that, and what if your federal courthouse was in a residential style garden office? I mean,
or shopping center.
Yeah, you'd be like, okay, well,
they didn't mean it.
That's it. They didn't mean it. They're right next to the Subway sandwich, right?
Right. So there was that, and of course, all of our school work. We've been doing education work for 40 years, and that has blossomed into an expertise that we have that it goes beyond just doing a school.
Well, there's high schools, there's elementary schools, there's
middle
community
schools,
colleges, universities.
Yeah.
The amount of work that you've done at Southeastern is really staggering.
That was very pivotal in our growth. We actually did the master plan with them and have updated it 3 times since the year 2000, and it's changed because things change.
Right.
But we actually have done 7 buildings on that campus, major buildings, and that has changed the face of that university in a major way. I remember telling the president at the time, it's so very important that the perimeter of your campus become attractive because you only have one opportunity to make a first impression. And that little small thought turned into a major piece for that president and presidents after him, where they realized, boy, is that so true? It's important that we do it right and make sure people understand who we are and what our identity is and what our brand is, because we don't know how many parents come to the edge and just leave.
Yeah, and it's really an impressive campus now. I mean, I've watched it over the last 30 years myself and done a lot of work out there. And so, Mike, I've seen on your website, am I saying this right, the Cambria Hotels?
The Cambria Hotel. Our hotels, we actually have done a number of things for Cambria. We have worked on a lot of developer-based prototypes to look at sites and show them how to develop it. But they ultimately asked us to write the design guide. We call it the Cambria Suites DNA, Design Navigation Aid. And they use it to give to developers to say, this is our image, this is our brand, this is how our room lays out, this is what you got to do to be a Cambria. So we wrote that document for them, our team did. And then we ultimately, in the same time frame, we did a hotel in New Orleans for them,
right?
On Tchoupitoulas, between Tchoupitoulas and Common, and then they turned around and asked us to do one in Nashville, and it's a 22-story building with 5 stories of parking garage, and it's in downtown Nashville. And
beautiful building.
Yeah, it was incredible to have that opportunity and to get in a way regional, get beyond our immediate area and do this work. And it was a very successful project.
Yeah, I was curious how much other out-of-state work you've done other than that.
Not a lot.
Yeah,
Not a lot.
that's
Some.
interesting.
We've been around, and we've done work in Mississippi, and but our primary territory is South Louisiana.
And look, a lot of those buildings that I've seen that you guys have gotten into, particularly the larger ones, they get more and more sophisticated, more and more complex, and then of course you guys have your consultants that you bring on, your engineering for mechanical, electrical, and on and on. And I was just thinking that, you know, it seems like you would judge the complexity of a project, at least from the design perspective, depending on the number of consultants that you had to have work underneath you.
Yeah.
And I was just curious if you could comment on that, and then add about some of the more arcane or unusual consultants that you may have had to engage over the years.
It's so very important to get the right expert in the right place to do the right thing. Right now, we are doing a commercial level broadcast education studio at Southeastern for broadcasting communication majors. They have to have the same thing that any television station would have. So we don't certainly think we have the expertise to do that. So we went and found the right group to join up with us out of Pittsburgh. And that's all they do. They not only help us understand how it ought to function, but they certainly cover the technical basis, from Foley to sound effects to all the necessary bells and whistles that go with a full-blown production studio. Yeah. And they will have it at the end of the day. We get involved with some pretty unique consultants. The one that comes to mind that is probably the most unique is a lady that we found out of New York. She had a company called Theater and Safety Consultants. She was basically an industrial hygienist that worked in the art world, and helped us. Just started that work, as a matter of fact. Got this job 10 years ago, but we just started construction because funding's finally there for the new studio art complex for LSU, which is in the old engineering shops building. So we basically gutted it, and she helped us understand the necessary chemical separations that are, with all these chemicals that they're using in ceramics and painting and all these other things, and how to keep those atmospheres separate, and how to go about making sure that those things don't end up in the atmosphere and everybody breathe it in. But funny, she was an interesting lady. When she came down here to meet with LSU and us to do our first walkthrough, she flew in from Dubai. Somebody hired her to go do something in Dubai, and this lady has no filter. She says what she thinks. And you know, when you walk through a building like an art building for LSU, and you're walking with the safety people, you have to carefully talk about what's dangerous and what's not. Well, she didn't know how to do that. And it turns out, after we finished the whole walkthrough and did everything, got her started, she tells me her life story. She is the daughter of two vaudeville actors, and she said it. And she was an older lady, you know. But she said at the age of 18, she just got up, and she was a part of the team, and she got aggravated with 18. She just got and left. I said, "Well, did you ever contact your parents after that?" She says, "No, they were crazy." Just a really strange lady, but knew her business very well.
That's funny. So what is the largest construction value building that you guys have done?
I want to say $78 million. It was the renovation of and addition of the Monroe Hall building for Loyola University in New Orleans. We did that as a joint venture with Halliburton Root. Halliburton Root were founded in 1853. They've been around for that long. If you ever read the book, The Devil in the White City, they're in there, okay? But that project was fascinatingly complicated. It was full of chemistry and physics facilities and art facilities, and It was 5 stories, and we had to add 2 stories to it. And, oh, by the way, we don't have any swing space, so you have to do this while we're in it. So we had to come up with a concept that allowed that to happen. And they wanted all new mechanical electrical systems, all new stairwells. So we came up with what we called saddlebags, a saddlebag concept where we ran all of the mechanical electrical systems down the sides of the building, and then we did a floor-by-floor plug-and-play.
Oh, my goodness.
And so that we built 2 floors at the top. We moved people up there. We moved somebody out of a floor. They moved up. We went in and renovated it, plug-and-played all the MEP systems. And
oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it was complicated. It was a 5-year project.
Very cool. All right, Mike, let's get in another break, get in a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank Gear Train for their support of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. Gear Train is a national program management company that specializes in the inspection and audit of conveyor systems, VRCs, robotics, and material handling equipment. Gear Train also manages routine maintenance and repair programs, as well as emergency callouts for clients all across the United States. Gear Train technicians have the experience to keep your automated equipment systems running at peak output. For all of your inspection, audit, and maintenance needs, reach out to Gear Train. They can be found online at geartrainperforms.com. And we are back with Mike Holly, Chairman of the Board of Holly & Smith Architects. Mike, your firm has won a ton of design excellence awards over your career. And I was curious how important those are to your firm, to your employees, and what do those mean to you?
Well, there's a number of pieces to that. It's very important to our employees. It's important that they know that they're part of a team that can really, really perform, and they perform well. It pulls everybody together. It's, I think, less important to our owners, but they're proud. You know that they are, but it's not. We don't get the award for just throwing it out there and saying, "Hey, look what we did." You got to be able to tell the story.
Yeah,
there's got to be some meat to it. If you can't say why, then you haven't gotten anywhere.
Right.
And so we spend a lot of time speaking to the project and first deciding, okay, this is worthy of recognition. And then we try and write the story of what happened and how it's gotten there and what's important about it. And that's what is important in the whole scheme of things. The award process, I like to say this, I appreciate getting recognized by your colleagues in the architecture profession. I much prefer an award from somebody, from a group that somebody else belongs to, that our clients belong to. They're more important to me because they're recognizing the importance of it all. And from a sales perspective, those are the people you want to touch.
Yeah. Well, I can see a young architect coming in to interview at your firm, and I mean, you have a daunting wall of awards, at least the last time I saw it. And I can imagine them going, okay, I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn something here.
Well, that's about recruiting talent. Yeah. You want them to feel that way.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask you about a re-imaging or a rebranding you did. I don't know, was it 10 years ago?
Yeah, probably about 10. We, again, it's about hiring the right people to do the right things. And
I mean, it's Holly & Smith Architects, and you just, what would you call it, a re-imaging?
Rebranding.
Yeah.
Rebranding. We went about trying to find not only a changing our logos and images and colors, but we also went through and rehabbed our website. And we've done it since then. We've done it a couple of times, just to update it. But the website is as important as anything, as is social media. We have a person on our staff who that's her responsibility. That's what she does.
Yeah. Besides
everything else. I mean, that's one of her responsibilities.
Well, our listeners know that I'm a branding guy, meaning that I really think that's an important part of communicating to your customers and a part of the success in a business. And I just made note of how you guys did that. No surprise, being the design-oriented people that you are, but I thought it was like brilliantly executed. I thought it was clear, concise, and just very well done. And it touched like everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And it rolled out, and it was out, and it was just really well done.
And you can't sway from it. You have to stick to your brand standards. We have people in our office who I call the brand police that make sure that we don't stray from it. It's got to be the right font. It's got to be the right color. Got to be the right proportion.
Paul, you are talking music to my ears, because there are some people that don't subscribe to that, but brand police is really important. So look, that's an investment, right? I mean, you spent some real money on that. You can tell just by looking at it. I mean, you even had business cards that had some graphics on it, and there would be different graphics on your employee's card from card to card.
Right.
And I mean, that's like attention to detail. And I think it would have been little mini images of details of your buildings that you designed, or elevations.
It's a line that we found, and we actually update it periodically.
Yeah.
It's on our letterhead. It's on our cards. It's on anything that we do that is out there as it relates to brand. And it's a little piece of a building that we've done, or a little detail or something that fit well into that little strip.
Right, that's right. Yeah, and I'd never seen anyone do that, and it's like this was very impressive. So you made an investment on that, and when you look back on that investment, I mean, how does that feel for you? I mean, was that a good investment? Was it something you'd absolutely do again? Was it
absolutely? It's a necessary investment. Yeah. You got to do it. It's part of who you are.
Yeah.
Your identity in the world, digitally, visually, personally, is real important.
Yeah. So you went from Holly and Smith to H&S.
HS. Actually, we had, that's our brand, HS, H/S, but we still are known as Holly and Smith.
Right.
And that's a conscious decision. We don't want to get caught up in being called an initial. The first thought was that we would do that to make this business transition leadership-wise, but it became clear to us that to do that may put you in a position where people don't know who you are. I mean, we've been Holly and Smith for 40 years, actually 36 years, but that's a regional presence and a regional kind of understanding of who we are, and you don't just throw that away.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about a special project, Pondhouse. Can you tell us?
Close to my heart.
So tell our listeners and viewers, what is Pondhouse, and give us the story of Pondhouse.
In 1994, I bought a cow pasture. Pondhouse belongs to me.
Right.
I bought a cow pasture near the Tangipahoa River, and spent 10 years developing a master plan.
That's a long time.
Dug a pond, landscaped it. Every tree that you see on that 16-acre tract of land has been planted by
vertical
me.
construction.
My wife will say she did it all. She planted it all. I'll give her that. She did a lot of it.
But there's no vertical buildings at that point. You're just doing landscaping and digging ponds.
I'm just working on the horizontal, right?
Yeah.
And I guess about 2012, I started toying around with the idea of doing a building out there. Actually, I did a house, but decided not to do it because we like living downtown Hammond. So I decided I needed a place to light. You know, some people would call it a man cave. I call it a great environment for hanging out. And my grandfather did this, but in sort of a different way. He had a farm he went to take a nap. He said he was going to the farm to look at the cows, but he was really going to take a nap. But so I just thought of that as the impetus to do this. And then I got to thinking about, you know what? This is not just that. I need to be able to show that this building not only can be an incredible higher end environment, but it can also be an energy producer, a net zero building. And it needs to be oriented right. It needs to accept the sun when you want it and shield it when you don't want it. And this building does that. We are actually net zero. I have enough solar panels on that roof, and I installed them during that time frame when net metering was hot and heavy. Literally paid for itself in 4 years. I run my meter backwards, I guess you could say, and when the sun's out, and I only pay for what I don't produce. And usually what happens is this time of year I'm collecting credits, and I use them up all summer.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a very special place. We have office events there. I've had other events there.
So describe the Pondhouse itself.
Think of it as a 3-story, 1,200 square foot structure. I always had a sort of intrinsic need to go vertical. I used to hang out at the top of oak trees and hickory trees when I was a kid. I always thought it was incredible. There are certain trees in my childhood that I could climb blindfolded.
Yeah,
I climbed them so many times. And so the first floor it's in a floodplain, so it's raised. That's just an activity area.
right.
And then the second floor is a kitchen, living, and dining space. It cantilevers out over the water. And on the third floor is a bedroom and a bathroom and a big deck area that's over the part that cantilevers out over the water.
So there are a lot of images out there. It's won design awards, and it's got a lot of recognition. I would love for our viewers and listeners to be able to go check that out. It's an exceptionally special place.
HollyandSmith.com. Click on living or live, and it's in there.
Pondhouse.
Pondhouse at Ten Oaks Farm. And
man, what a special place that is. I mean, over the years, someone in your office has, maybe posted images of that.
Right.
I look at everyone every single time.
Well, interesting story about that building. When we finished it, it got recognized by the Contemporist, which is a website that does special design work. They recognize it, and they got there, and it just exploded. It went everywhere. Everybody saw it. I got calls from people from Italy. It got published in a magazine in Mumbai, Home and Garden of Mumbai. It just got all over the place. And if you just type in the Pondhouse at Ten Oaks Farm, you're going to see it all over the world.
It is. It's a special place. So congratulations on that. I know, you put a lot of energy in planning it, and you must be super proud.
Here's
of
an
that.
interesting story. We were so busy after Katrina, even in 2012, that I couldn't find enough people in my own company to help me do these plans. So I just finally said, you know what? I'm going to go back and just hand draw this whole thing on 11 by 17 paper, which I did. And it's a full set of documents, and I had a ball.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Erasers, pencils, the whole way.
Fantastic.
And the building structure leans.
Right.
So just to figure out how the steel worked in the building took a lot of math.
Yeah.
Because it was complicated.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the whole process.
So recently you have announced the next generation of leadership at Holly and Smith.
Right.
And can you tell us about that process? And then what are the plans for you? Is this the start of an exit strategy for you and Jeffrey, or how does that work?
In 2002 or 3, with this same consultant we worked with out of Seattle that I mentioned earlier in this interview, we asked him to help us work on a generational transfer plan. And he came up with these ideas about how it ought to work. And we turned it into a document with the idea that certain people would be offered an opportunity to assume leadership. And he sent it to us, and he said, look, you need to take this document and give it to your lawyer because it's not Louisianaized. We had to turn it into a legal document, and we started some offerings to some of the people who have been with us for 30 years. And that leadership is over time, and it really didn't happen right away.
Right.
It happened in a fairly significant way from about 2010 to now. So it doesn't happen overnight. You have to plan it. That's what we do. We do planning.
Right.
So you plan it and you execute it and make sure it comes off right. Yeah, I had a few hiccups here and there, but it's worked for the most part. And we just recently announced new leadership, a new president, a new CEO. That used to be my position, and a new design director, which used to be Jeffrey's position. And people ask me, well, what do you do? And I say, I'm kind of leading from behind. Jeffrey and I kind of standing in the wings, kind of advising on what ought to happen. I always tell them everything I say you should assume that I'm starting it with I suggest that, or I recommend that. And they come to me from time to time, and we talk about things. But I mean, these guys are not newcomers. They've been around for a long time, so they understand our culture and they understand our DNA.
But the way that it works is these are the guys that are going to lead the business forward and create the opportunities and the profits that are then going to help pay you for the equity that you built in your business over 40 years.
That's right. That's how it works. And
so
it's worked out well. And I can't imagine, and I think Jeffrey's in the same boat, just walking away. I mean, this baby is grown, but it's still our child. So you don't walk away from the child. So eventually we'll get to that point, but I don't think it'll be anytime soon. A lot of people have read what we said was that we're retiring. That's not what we said. Yeah. If you read the press release, it's like we're just stepping back and staying involved.
Yeah.
And it's important that they take on more responsibility and do what needs to be done and ask when they feel like they need to ask.
Well, Michael, just in wrapping up, the success of your business has been, very significant. And I was curious if you've identified that one trait maybe that you could point to as being the key to your success. I have some thoughts on that myself, but I was curious what you thought.
It's kind of hard to put into words. Initially, it was survival, plain and simple. The pressure of, providing for your family. I think even today it's the same thing. But, I've always been, the best way I can describe it is I've always been on the balls of my feet. Never leaned back on my heels. It's always been, let's move forward. Let's figure out what's in front of us, and let's do the best we can with what we've got. And I guess the biggest advice I could give anybody that's starting out in this business is don't turn away anything. We do anything. I mean, anything came in the door, we figured out how to turn it into something it wasn't.
I think I built a dog pound that you had designed for you.
You did.
As an example.
Yeah, and it looked like a bunch of dog houses.
That's right.
And the rehab pool was the shape of a dog bone. Yes.
So, what I was going to make note of is that when you mentioned that I was on the ball of your feet, that's exactly what I sense of 32 years of being aware of your business and doing business with you. And also what I always sensed was that you were just a solid businessman. Like you had the business of the design industry well within your grasp, and you manage that aggressively. And I've always respected that about you and appreciated that about you. But beyond all that, I've always cherished our friendship. And I thank you for coming in today and sharing your stories.
My pleasure.
And I look forward to continuing to see how Holly and Smith progresses. So
Awesome.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Nothing defines an architect as clearly as their portfolio of work. The Holly and Smith portfolio is exceptional, from very large, very complex projects down to very beautiful residences. Do yourself a favor and check out their website, but particularly the Pondhouse at 10 Oaks Farm. It is just exceptional. You know, Mike talked about survival several times in the podcast, and I think that's an entrepreneurial trait. I think Michael just, came to the office every day, doing everything that he could to move his business forward. From the 32 years that I spent doing business with him, what I saw was a great business operator in Michael. So we continue to wish Michael and his team continued success. He's a great friend. We're honored to have him on the show. And you can find Michael online at hollyandsmith.com. We appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.